I'm Katie Tamblin, and welcome back to EcoDev. Today, we're going to be talking about labor, and particularly the workers that made what you're wearing, harvested the food that you ate, built your house, or drove your items from the distribution center to the store. Across the landscape of our global supply chains, every day, millions and millions of workers are exploited. It was estimated in 2021 that 49.6 million people were in some sort of modern slavery around the globe. Of those, over 27 million were in forced labor. And even beyond just forced labor and really egregious practice that is called modern slavery, workers are exploited every day in the pursuit of low cost, in the pursuit of efficiency. Companies are inadvertently outsourcing bad practice. And as a result, people are treated incredibly poorly in their daily lives and as they try to make a living.
Business should be ethical. But decisions that are made by owners of organizations can have a huge effect. And I don't think in a lot of cases that businesses truly understand the effect in the decisions that they make. That can then trickle down into modern slavery.
Things have evolved now. There is some subtle kind of slavery in business life, in supply chains, in our everyday life, which is not as visible as banding people in chains, carrying them on trafficking them through different channels for exploitation purpose. But for me, modern slavery is it's a term that can be used to describe any unethical and abusive behavior, such as maybe child labor, forced labor, and things like that. Things as little as, confiscating your workers' passports, people working under threat or some kind of coercion, can be seen as modern slavery, and this happens in everyday life, especially at across supply chains.
People speak heavily about modern slavery and what's that? I don't think that's a real thing. Does that really go on? But that is essentially the very severe end to really poor morals when it comes to engaging with people that work for you or within your value chain.
There are lots and lots of ways in which workers are exploited. This is a spectrum of abuse. On one end, you have modern slavery, which we think of, the publicized cases of children being put to work instead of going to school, of people being trapped in forced labor.
Yeah, so I think if we talked about child labour, for example, reality is in the UK, in construction sites, for example, you're just not going to see it effectively. We've got practices in this country that are mitigating against that, high levels of education and so on that's going on, that just mitigates that type of severe exploitation. But
so in many developed economies, you have legislation and regulation and processes that help to prevent worker exploitation. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It just means that it happens in different ways and often more complex and opaque ways.
Especially in the areas where we're working, predominantly we're working in the construction sector. I think it can be even small things. It can be things around people not understanding the terms of employment or their rights under the contract, so having visibility of that. But then it can get much wider. That you got instances where temporary workers aren't necessarily getting paid all their holiday pay, where that's been collected and not passed on. You got potential areas where people are not, they're adding additional costs to the workers, whether that be in forms of rebate or otherwise. We're seeing a whole host of pressure when it comes to the workforce in terms of what are they earning on a daily basis. And I think as pressure gets put on these businesses, at the moment we're seeing in the construction sector, the workers are seen as an easy place to potentially recover some of that margin. And that might be from, not necessarily passing on all that money down there. So we do see elements of skimming, if that's what you want to call it, that in the workforce, which is definitely a worker exploitation in my view. That shouldn't be going on in today's world.
we know that worker exploitation is still happening. And often it's happening through very sophisticated mechanisms that obscure those workers, that keep them out of sight, and that make it hard for them to ask for help.
I think adding to that, and maybe on less of a financial side of things, is you see is work fatigue, working hours, hours to drive to site. It's no secret around labour shortages as well, and being able to get those people to your project can sometimes come at a cost to the human, being one of those. Always elements around personal protective equipment and the quality and replacement of that. There's small things that are just poor ways to engage or manage a member of the workforce.
Human trafficking is not an act of exploitation. It's just a channel through which exploitation, which is modern slavery, which it occurs. So it's they're all linked, but there could be slavery without somebody being trafficked. So I could be in the UK, not moving, nobody's moving me in a bus or on a ferry through the back doors of some country, but I could still be exploited. Human trafficking is more like a channel or a system through which slavery can occur.
Worker exploitation is almost always a result of cost-cutting measures. And so when companies come under pressure and they want to produce more for less costs, they cut corners. And cutting corners means paying workers less than they are entitled to, quite often less than the minimum wage. Cutting corners might mean that they don't allow workers to have the appropriate number of breaks that they should have in order to keep them safe on the job. And that could even be breaks between traveling to work and actually performing the work. Quite often it means that they don't have the appropriate safety gear that they're required to have to be safe on site, or that they're living in conditions that are uninhabitable. In some cases with forced labor, we see practices such as passports being taken so that workers are unable to leave and unable to secure any other type of work for themselves. For more information on what you can do to help workers that might be exploited, keep watching and subscribe to our YouTube channel to be alerted when new content becomes available.